Elephants? What does that got to do with history? Well, it's all connected to an African proverb. Actually, one African proverb and an idiomatic expression that probably originated from the Greeks. Keep watching and you all will be revealed before the end of this video. Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Today in History and my name is Sotonye Afiesimam. Would you like to discover what happened on this day several centuries ago? If so, join me on your fascinating journey through the ages. We'll start with a battle which occurred 11 centuries ago on this day. In the year 910, there was a battle between the Hungarians and the East Frankish army under King Louis the Child. It was called the Battle of Lechfeld. Using the famous feigned retreat tactic of the nomadic warriors, the Hungarians defeated the East Frankish army. Obviously, this feigned tactic was pretending basically pretending that you had retreated essentially and then ambushing your enemy. So that's how the Hungarians defeated the East Frankish army. 1550 on this day, the city of Helsinki, Finland, belonging to Sweden at the time, is founded by King Gustav I of Sweden. In 1653, 103 years later, the first Anglo-Dutch War occurred. The Battle of the Gabbard lasted for just one day. Thomas Willett, 1665, was appointed the first mayor of New York City. This is what Thomas Willett looks like. The first mayor of New York City. He was also the third mayor of New York City. We move on to the year 1758, where the French and Indian War took place. There was a siege of a town called Louisbourg in Nova Scotia, in what's now called Canada. In 1772, French explorer Marc-Joseph Marion du Fresne and 25 of his men were killed by Māori in New Zealand. In 1817, we had the revelation of a new invention. This bicycle was called the Dandy Horse and was driven for the first time by Karl von Drais. In 1898, the Filipinos declared independence from Spain under their president, Emilio Aguinaldo, General Emilio Aguinaldo. In the year 1935, a ceasefire is negotiated between Bolivia and Paraguay, ending the Chaco War. 1939, the Baseball Hall of Fame opens in Cooperstown, New York. Also on this day, 13-year-old Anne Frank celebrates her 13th birthday with a gift of a diary. This diary became known worldwide as the Diary of Anne Frank, as she chronicled her experiences during the Second World War. Sadly, Anne did not survive the war and died less than a year before the end of the war in 1944 at the age of 15. We move on to the year 1963, another sad occurrence on this year. In this year, I should say. In this year, 1963, the NAACP Field Secretary, Medgar Evers, is murdered in front of his home in Jackson, Mississippi, by Ku Klux Klan member Byron de la Beckwith during the Civil Rights Movement. In 1967, still in the United States, the Supreme Court, in a case titled Loving versus Virginia, declares all U.S. state laws which prohibit interracial marriage to be unconstitutional. We move swiftly on to the year 1979. This guy looks like a nerd. You'll find out why I call him a nerd. His name is Brian Allen, and on this day in 1979, Brian wins the second Kremer Prize for a man-powered flight across the English Channel in the Gossamer Albatross. This is what the Gossamer Albatross looked like. We move on to the year 1987. It was bad news again. Well, good news, I suppose, for the people of the country. This man, his name is Jean-Bédel Bokassa. On this day, he was sentenced to death for crimes he had committed during his 13-year rule. He was the president first of the Central African Republic and proclaimed himself emperor. We now go on to Russia. On this day, in 1990, Russia formally declares its sovereignty. This was the first democratically elected president of Russia. For those who still remember, Russia was a bigger country called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics before the other smaller countries, the other republics, broke away and Russia declared themselves a republic. In 1991, Kukadikolai massacre happened. The Sri Lankan army massacred 152 minority Tamil civilians in the village of Kukadikolai near the eastern province town of Batticaloa. In 1993, in Africa, the largest country by population in Africa, there was an election on this day. The election of a man called Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola. It was touted as the freest and fairest election in Nigeria. But the military government, who was supposed to be handing over to the civilian government, a civilian elected government, annulled the election. Mr. Abiola, or Chief MKO for short, Abiola, subsequently declared himself president. He was arrested, sent to jail, and he died whilst awaiting trial. Next, we go on to my promise about those elephants, our African proverb. It fits right here. Now, there's a saying which emanated from East Africa that when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. You know, in the country called Nigeria today, the citizenry have suffered through the ages since independence in 1960 on the 1st of October. We have a president who was elected to serve his people, an election that was touted as free and fair from all over the world, not just Nigerians, pressmen from the West, from all over the world. There was hope for Nigeria at the time. But as I said earlier, the election was annulled. MKO Abiola proclaimed himself president, and rightly so, but he was arrested, jailed, he died in jail. Now, things haven't been very good for Nigeria since that day. And today happens to be Democracy Day in Nigeria. Thankfully, the people rose up and decided to make this day unforgettable. So we hope that things would improve in Nigeria, that the current president would put things in place to make sure that the military do not come back. And also to make sure that when politicians take power, they deliver on their promises. They don't make promises and renege on their promises. So that's what happened in Nigeria, and that's the proverb about elephants. In 1994, in the United States of America, on this day, this lady was murdered. Her name is Nicole Simpson. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were murdered outside O.J. Simpson's home in Los Angeles. Now, O.J. Simpson was a famous American footballer. He was charged with the murders, understandably, because he had a vested interest. This was his estranged wife who apparently was having an affair. But he's acquitted by a jury. Obviously, there wasn't enough evidence to convict him. We move on to the United Kingdom, 1997. Queen Elizabeth opens the Globe Theatre on this day. Moving swiftly on, 2009, a disputed presidential election. Another disputed presidential election in Iran leads to wide-ranging local and international protests. This happened in 2009 on this day. 2016, 49 civilians are killed and 58 others injured in an attack on a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. The gunman, Omar Martin, is killed in a gunfight with police. 2017, exactly 3 years ago to the day, American student, pictured here, Otto Warmbier, returns home in a coma after spending 17 months in a North Korean prison and dies a week later. How sad. So, the other thing I said about elephants was there is a Greek idiom about elephants. Do you want to hear that? So, oh, I forgot. I didn't actually. It says that an elephant never forgets. Thanks for watching, guys. See you tomorrow on Today in History. Hopefully, we'll learn from our history so that we can correct problems that may show up in the future. History is a great teacher, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to set up this channel. Thanks again, guys, for watching. Make sure you like my video. If you like it, give me a thumbs up. Press the subscribe button and click on the notification bell so that you're notified of my uploads via email. Thanks for watching again, guys. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.